Hello, I'm Vítálij Skalskis. I'm historian from Kyiv, Ukraine. Invite you to attend my lecture, Ukraine and Latvia, the Existence, Modern Nation and State. From the 18th century until the early 19th century, Ukrainians and Latvians lived in the same state, the Russian Empire. It was a very strange and illogical coexistence under the rule of the Russian Tsar in the status of a subjected nation. On this map, you can see the region where Ukrainians, pink, and Latvians, yellow, were settled. During the 19th century, the Russian Empire conquered all of Latvia. In 1710, the Russian conquered Riga. After the first partition of Poland in 1772, Russia gained Livonia. After the third partition of Poland in 1795, the Russian Empire owned all the territories inhabited by Latvians and most of the territories inhabited by Ukrainians. For some time, the Latvian lands retained elements of autonomy, such as a judicial system, taxes, and self-government. Ukrainians lost the remnants of the autonomy in 1775. At the beginning of the 19th century, Ukrainian territories belonged to two states, Russian and Austrian empires. In the Romanov Empire, Ukrainians, who were called Little Russians, in Ukrainian Malorossi, lived compactly in 9 provinces: Volyn, Kyiv, Podillia, Poltava, Chernihiv, Kharkiv, Kherson, Katerinoslav, and Tavria. In all of the above administrative units, they constituted the majority. For example, according to the 1897 census of the Russian Empire, which was conducted on a language basis, most Ukrainians lived in Poltava and the least in Kherson. The only exception was the Tavria, which included the Crimea. A little over 42% of Ukrainians were recorded there. At some time, in the main line of the Tavria, which included Dnipro, Melitopol, and Berdyansk Povets, the share of Ukrainians was over 60%. 1,420 Ukrainians lived in Latvia. 363 Ukrainians lived in the Kurland. 638 Ukrainians lived in Livonia. There were 419 Ukrainians in the Latvian district of Vitebsk. The largest Ukrainian communities is the lands where Mitava, Liepāja, Riga, and Daugavpils. In the Habsburg Empire, Ukrainians were called Rusin, and their main places of residence were localized in eastern Galicia, northern Bukovina, and Transcarpathia. According to the 1900 census, the share of Ukrainians on religion grounds in Austria-Hungary was 8% of the total population of the empire. Overall, the Russian Empire had 85% of Ukrainian lands, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire had 50%. In both states, Ukrainians lived mostly in rural areas, and their percentage among urban residents was small. This was true of Kyiv, Kharkiv, Odessa, Katerinoslav, Lviv, Ternopil, Stanisławiv, and Chernivtsi. According to the 1897 census, 1,435,000 people in Russia declared Latvian as their native language. This amounted to 1% of the total population of the Russian Empire. Latvians made up the majority in the Kurland, Valki, Vendene, Volmara, and Riga district of the Livonian province, and the Dvinsk, Lyuchin, and Rezhetsa district of the Vitebsk province. There were 2,137 Latvians living in the Ukrainian territory. There were no places of compact residence of Latvian in Ukraine. Largest Latvian community in Ukraine are Yekaterinoslav, Pavlograd, Bakhmut, Kyiv, Звенигородка, Balta, Vinnytsia, Simferopol, Yalta, Kharkiv, and Odessa. Despite the absence of an independent Ukraine state on the map of Europe, Ukrainians tried to develop their cultural life and create their national identity. Of course, within the condition provided by the Romanovs and Habsburgs. In Russia, Ukrainians had worse opportunities for national and cultural development. The Ukrainian national poet Taras Shevchenko was a real symbol for Ukrainians. He inspired many generations. He was involved in the activities of the first Ukrainian illegal political organization in the Russian Empire. It's the Kirill and Methodius Brotherhood, in Ukrainian Кирило-Мефодіївське товариство. This organization emerged around 1845 and lasted only a few years. Its creation was greatly influenced by the revolutionary events in Europe in 1848-1849, the Spring of Nations. The organization's program document was called the Book of Being of Ukrainian People. In Ukrainian, Книга буття українського народу. It contained the idea of integrating the Slavic peoples, including Ukrainians, into a federal republic with autonomous rights for each subject. The Russian imperial authorities continued to suppress the Ukrainian national movement, especially the use of the Ukrainian language. In 1863, it was forbidden to publish religious education and training books in Ukrainian, the so-called Valuyev Circular, in Ukrainian Valuyevский Circular. Another attack on the Ukrainian national movements occurred in 1876, when Tsar Alexander signed the Ems decree, in Ukrainian Emsky Ukaz, which ousted the Ukrainian language from many spheres of life and banned the import of Ukrainian language literature from abroad. At the same time, Mikhailo Dragomanov, a famous philosopher, professor at St. Volodymyr's University in Kyiv, the first Ukrainian socialist and supporter of Ukraine's autonomy within a federal Russia, was forced to leave Russian-occupied Ukraine. The first Ukrainian political party in the Russian Empire, the Revolutionary Ukrainian Party, was founded in Kharkiv in 1900. Its program was based on the brochure Independent Ukraine by Mykola Mikhnovsky, which contained the thesis 1. United, indivisible, free, independent Ukraine from the Carpathian Mountains to the Caucasus. However, the Revolutionary Ukrainian Party later abandoned this program and switched to the traditional autonomist principle of Ukrainian movement of the time. The revolution in Russia, despite expectations, did not resolve the problem of state restructuring and modern transformation of the empire, leaving these problems for the future. In the Habsburg Empire, Ukrainians had much greater opportunities to develop a national and culture movement, and its regime was much more liberal than Russia's. The Spring of Nations contributed to the creation in Lviv of the main Ruthenian Council, the first Ukrainian national political organization in Galicia. Its activities were completely legal. Its members demanded the division of Galicia into Eastern Ukrainian and Western Polish parts, the integration of areas with a compact Ukrainian population, Eastern Galicia, Northern Bukovina, and Transcarpathia, into one administrative unit, and the Ukrainization of various spheres of culture and social life, and so on. An important role in the national revival in Galicia belonged to the Greek Catholic clergy, who created the culture and educational society Prosvita, which was founded in Lviv in 1868. At the end of the 19th century, relation between the sub-Russian and the sub-Austrian Ukrainian activists became stronger. This was facilitated by the relatively liberal regime in Galicia, which was called the Ukrainian Piedmont. The first Ukrainian political party, the Ruthenian Ukrainian Radical Party, was founded in Lviv in 1890. One of its leading figures was Julian Baczynski, author of Ukraine Irredenta, in which he substantiated the need for Ukraine to gain political independence on Marxist principles. The first decades of the 20th century didn't significantly change the situation of Ukrainians and Latvians. Timid and extremely inconsistent democratization in Russia in 1905-1907 was followed by an almost complete ban on the Ukrainian and Latvian movements. However, against the background of the gradual growth of the market economy, businessmen became patrons of the Ukrainian culture movement. Economic development led to the movement of people between different parts of the empire. Officials, the military, teachers, and students from Ukraine traveled to Latvia. Latvians went to work in large cities and industrial regions of Ukraine. Officials and the military were also among the Latvians. Individual Ukrainians in Latvia gradually began to unite. A theater with a Ukrainian repertoire was founded in Riga in 1901. A meeting of Ukrainians in Riga was dedicated to establish a society on January 26, 1910. For several months, they prepared a charter. A notice of approval of the charter was received on January 1911. The first meeting of the Ukrainian Hromada was held on January 16, 1911. Apolinary Marshinsky became its chairman. The number of members of the community was unstable. The first building was a house on the corner of Alexandrivska and Yelizavetinska streets in the central part of Riga. In the fall of 1911, the building of the first music institute in Riga at Konyushina Street was rented. The community tried to open a Ukrainian library in Riga. Since 1910, memorial services for Taras Shevchenko has been held annually in the Orthodox Cathedral in Riga. Similarly, Latvians in Ukraine also organized their own societies that conducted national and cultural activities. The most famous organization is the Kharkiv-Lithuanian Mutual Aid Society. It was founded on September 1899. The war between the Entente and the Triple Alliance, which began on August 1914, involved almost 4,000 states, including the Russian and Austro-Hungarian empires, countries that included Ukrainian and Latvian lands. The war gave Ukrainians and Latvians the opportunity to create their own states, although at first it seemed like a utopia. The Great War was fatal for Ukrainians. They were forced to confront each other as part of enemy armies. Latvians were mobilized only to the Russian army. 8 Latvian regiments were created in the Russian army. A Ukrainian volunteer force, the Legion of Ukrainian Siege Riflemen, was formed within the Austrian army. The hostilities led to refugees, disrupted the traditional way of life for peasants, and caused mass deportation and impoverishment of the population. The Ukrainian questions didn't attract the attention of the Entente and the Triple Alliance. For Russians, the Ukrainian nation didn't exist. Also, some Russian liberals saw Ukrainians as a separate branch of the great Russian people. Russia had its own plans for the Austrian-Ukrainian lands and occupied parts of Galicia and Bukovina in 1914. The Habsburgs wanted to expand their own territories and, as a result of successful counter-offensive, seized a number of Russian lands by the end of 1950. Ukrainian political figures on both sides of the front declared their loyalty and support for the imperial authorities, hoping for a solution to the Ukrainian questions and liberalization of the regime after the end of war. On the first day of the war in Lviv, Ukrainian political activists created an inter-party organization, the main Ukrainian Council. which was intended to represent the interest of Ukrainians within the Austro-Hungarian Empire. In parallel with the main Ukrainian Rada, another political organization of Ukrainians, the Union for the Liberation of Ukraine operated in Eastern Galicia. The Union for the Liberation of Ukraine aimed to revive Ukraine's independence. The armed confrontation between the Russians and Austrians on Eastern Front sometimes led to contacts between Ukrainians on both sides of the front, which helped strengthen the Ukrainian national movement. In early June 1916, Russian troops launched an offensive along the empty front. It was the Brusilov offensive. During the First World War, Latvia was divided in two. The western part was occupied by the Germans. The eastern part remained under the control of the Russians. The Germans saw Latvia as their land. Latvians wanted their own independent state. The revolutionary year of 1917 was coming. During the First World War, tens of thousands of Ukrainians ended up in Latvia. These were Ukrainians mobilized into the Russian Imperial Army and sent to the front against the Germans. In total, about 3 million Ukrainians served in the Russian Imperial Army. The headquarters of the 20th Army was stationed in Riga. It consisted of 21 corps. The vast majority of the soldiers in this corps were Ukrainians. After the February Revolution, opportunities arose in Petrograd for the democratization of Russian army. People of different nationalities began to create various national and cultural societies in the army. The Ukrainian Council of the 20th Army was established in the spring of 1917. The Ukrainian language newspaper, Ukrainian Voice, Український голос, was published in Riga on June. The Ukrainian Council in Riga held several congresses, organized rallies, and expressed support for the Ukrainian Central Rada. They also demanded that the 21st Army Corps of the Russian Army be transformed into a Ukrainian military unit. However, the Russian government refused to do so. Almost all Ukrainians of the 20th Army left for Ukraine in early December 1917. Latvians were also mobilized into the Russian Imperial Army. In total, 1,000 Latvians were forced to fight for Russia. They mostly served in the 20th Army Corps. A revolution took place in Russia in 1917. The Tsar fell. The process of disintegration of the empire began. Numerous ethnic communities saw self-organization and self-determination. Ukrainians, Belarusians, Poles, Latvians, Lithuanians, Estonians, Finns, Crimean Tatars, Caucasians, Siberians, and Central Asians all saw their own national structures. Ukrainians created the Ukrainian Central Rada. Latvians created the Latvian Provisional National Council. They held the National Congress, military, peasant, and labor congresses. Old ethnic political parties resumed their activities and new ones emerged. They organized their own national system of council and executive bodies headed by the General Secretariat. Similar processes took place among all the nations that inhabited the former Russian Empire. Ukrainian historiography uses the term Ukrainian Revolution. The chronological boundaries of the Ukrainian Revolution cover the years 1917-1921. This concept covers three stages. 1. The establishment and activities of the Ukrainian Central Rada, the creation and proclamation of the independence of the Ukrainian People's Republic. 2. Pavlo-Skoropadsky Ukrainian state or hetmanate. 3. The directory of the Ukrainian Public Republic. At the same time, the Western Ukrainian People's Republic is a separate page in the history of the Ukrainian Revolution. The Ukrainian Central Rada was established on March 1917. And was initially a representative body of social and political organization. After the All-Ukrainian National Congress in April, the Central Rada became a parliament. It was headed by historian Mikhailo Grushevsky. Almost throughout the entire period of its existence, the Ukrainian Central Rada defined this concept of Ukraine's territorial autonomy within a democratic Russia. This is confirmed by state and political acts, universals. The first universal of June 10 stated, "Let Ukraine be free, without separating from the whole of Russia, without breaking with the Russian state. Let the Ukrainian people have the right to govern their own lives on their own land." The third universal of the Ukrainian Central Rada of November played an important role in the creation of the Ukraine state. The Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, carried out a coup d'etat and seized power in Petrograd. The third universal declared the creation of the Ukrainian People's Republic. This document outlined the territory of Ukrainian People's Republic, which was to cover the lands of 9 provinces where the majority of the population was Ukrainian. Ukrainian People's Republic declared the protection of the rights of national minorities and granted the right of national and personal autonomy to Russians, Jews, Poles, and other ethnic groups. Ukrainian People's Republic included Kyiv, Volyn, Podillia, Chernihiv, Poltava, Kharkiv, Katerinoslav, Kherson, and Tauria without Crimea. Ukrainian People's Republic was plagued by political struggle from the very beginning. The Bolsheviks, the left-wing radical forces, caused the most trouble. The first serious attempts to seize power in Ukraine occurred in November. After the October Revolution in Petrograd, the Bolsheviks sought to seize Ukraine. Bolshevik uprising took place in Kyiv, Vinnytsia, and several other cities. For the most part, these attempts were unsuccessful. In Soviet historiography, they were called the October Uprisings and the establishment of Soviet power. The Bolsheviks also created an alternative government, the People's Secretariat, and Parliament, the Central Executive Committee of the Soviets of Works, Soldiers, and Peasants Deputies of Ukraine. At the same time, the name of the state and even the name of the official newspaper, the Вестник Украинской Народной Республики, were retained. The bodies were to duplicate and discredit the Ukrainian Central Rada, imitate the struggle of Ukrainians against the Central Rada, and cover the expansionist intention of the Russian Bolsheviks under the mask of a civil war. At the same time, in December, the Russians launched an offensive against independent Ukraine. The Forum Universal of the Ukrainian Central Rada proclaimed the independence of the Ukrainian People's Republic from Russia on January 22, 1918. This marked the rejection of the concept of autonomy. On the same day, the Ukrainian Central Rada adopted the law on national and personal autonomy, which granted it to Russians, Jews, and Poles living in the United Public Republic. Other ethnic groups, Belarusians, Czechs, Moldovans, Germans, Tatars, Greeks, and Bulgarians, were also entitled to national and personal autonomy. The number of Latvians in Ukraine was too small to be granted autonomy. Latvians in Ukraine planned to hold the All-Ukrainian Latvian Congress in January 1918. However, they were prevented by the Bolsheviks, who started a war against Ukraine. The creation of All-Ukrainian Organization of Latvians had to be postponed. The Germans helped the Ukrainian Central Rada liberate Ukraine from the Bolsheviks, but the socialist experiments of the Ukrainian government caused serious concern on the German side. Therefore, a coup d'etat soon took place. The conservative Pavlo Skoropadsky came to power. With the support of German and Austro-Hungarian troops, he proclaimed the creation of the Ukrainian state. Historians describe Skoropadsky's government as a period of stability, writing about effective administrative reform, positive trends in education, and maintaining the security situation. The defeat of the Central Powers in the World War and the end of armed conflict on the Western Front caused the fall of Skoropadsky government. On November, Skoropadsky proclaimed the Federal Union of the Ukrainian state with non-Bolshevik Russia. In December, power in Nadnepranщina passed to the Directory of the Ukrainian People's Republic. However, the Directory had little control over the socio-political and security situation. 1919 was the year of the Jewish pogroms through Ukraine. The Jewish pogroms in Ukraine in 1919 are one of the least studied issues in modern Ukrainian history. In the fall of 1918, the Ukrainian National Revolution also spread to Eastern Galicia, Northern Bukovina, and Transcarpathia. In mid-October, the Ukrainian National Council, headed by Yevhen Petrushevich, was established in Lviv, independence was declared. At the same time, the Poles saw Eastern Galicia as part of their future state. The Polish-Ukrainian War began. On November, Ukrainians took control of Lviv. On November, the constitution of the Western Ukrainian People's Republic was adopted. In late November, the Polish recaptured Lviv. The Polish-Ukrainian War for Eastern Galicia continued. The situation was abnormal. After centuries without a state, two Ukrainian states existed: the Ukrainian People's Republic and the Western Ukrainian People's Republic. On January 22, 1919, the Act of Unification of the Ukrainian People's Republic and Western Ukrainian People's Republic took place in the center of Kiev on St. Sophia Square. The Directory, under pressure from the Bolsheviks, hastily left Kiev. It was seriously threatened by Anton Denikin's Russian volunteer army. He did not want an independent Ukraine. The leadership of the Western Ukrainian People Republic was also losing sovereignty over its state territories and needed external support. The question of choosing allies was extremely difficult for both Galician and Nadrians. The national state project of the Ukrainians clashed with similar project of the neighbors. The Bolsheviks wanted to see Ukraine as a Soviet state in an alliance with communist Russia. For the White Guards, Ukrainian lands were part of united and indivisible Russia. The Poles also had their own concept of reviving the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, which included Ukrainian territories. Transcarpathia was claimed by Hungary and Czechoslovakia. Northern Bukovina was sought to be incorporated by Romania. The northern border of Ukraine was the subject of discussion with the leaders of Belarusian People's Republic. At the end of the Great War, it was clear that the entente powers were of little interest to the Ukrainian questions. On April 1920, Polish Foreign Minister Jan Domski and Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Levitsky signed a secret political agreement in Warsaw. Soon it received a popular and historiographical name, the Warsaw Pact or the Alliance Pilsudski-Petliura. The Polish government recognized the Directorate of the independent Ukrainian People's Republic as the supreme authority of the Ukrainian People's Republic. The Warsaw Pact provided for territorial concession by the Ukrainian side in exchange for international recognition of the Ukrainian People's Republic and military assistance in the war against the Bolsheviks. Ukrainian People's Republic government recognized Eastern Galicia and Western Volhynia as part of the Polish state. The Polish-Soviet War began. In the fall of 1920, the Polish and Bolsheviks, exhausted by the military confrontations, signed a preliminary armistice and de facto ended the war. The Latvian capital Riga became the site of one of the final events of the Ukrainian People's Republic. On March 1921, a peace treaty was signed in Riga between Soviet Russia and Poland. The peace treaty provided for the establishment of a border between Russia and Poland along the bridge. This meant the division of Ukrainian lands between the two states again. In the most general estimates, Ukrainian historians call the Treaty of Riga the first partition of Ukraine, or Andrusovo of Riga. Emphasis that on March 18 in Riga, Ukrainian lands were divided between Russia and Poland for the second time without the consent of Ukrainians. Most Ukrainian historians today agree that the signing of the Peace of Riga ended the large-scale armed struggle of the nations of Central and Eastern Europe for their own statehood. They emphasize that Ukrainian and Belarusian lands were again divided between Russia and Poland. This geopolitical object is important for the Ukrainian memory of Riga. The Treaty of Riga was the final act of a long war in Eastern Europe. Ukraine lost then because it continued to be perceived as part of the Russian space. The Treaty of Riga allowed Bolshevik Russia to integrate into European affairs. Thank you.